Greetings once again, and thanks for joining us. This is Greg. As you know, we just got our production numbers in for Q3 of 2023, and we have a little sort of Tesla in the background, as you can see. The goal today is to review the general numbers and share some thoughts that I think go appropriately with those numbers. So the issue right now is that there's some discussion of the fact that the high end of production was expected to be about 459,000 vehicles. The actual number, as you know, is 435. And just a reminder, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show, would like some ideas on investing and trading, please join us on Patreon. So what I wanted to review today is the fact that I've been sort of reviewing everything associated with Tesla over the last 24 hours in preparation to do a show before or after the number. Well, the number came in, it was a little bit light. The initial reaction was a few points down on the stock, but now we're actually a few points up. What I kept thinking about is the fact that there's a thing that happens with companies. Each stage of their growth, they sort of move into what I want to call different degrees of maturity. So obviously, when you're a freshman in college, you're kind of starting out, figuring everything out. A lot of volatility, unpredictability. The next stage, obviously, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate school, etc. And if you look at Tesla, one of the lessons I was taught by Ken Fisher at Fisher Investments was that if you want to see a stock solidly go forward and stabilize, look at the number of analysts that track that stock. So in the case of Tesla, the number of analysts have risen a great deal, and part of it is the fact that Tesla, from what I read, is the most broadly held stock in the stock exchange currently. I also read a piece a couple of months ago that indicates Tesla is the number one trading option as well. So once we review both of these data points, what this means is that it's very hard when there are that many people that are excellent analysts tracking the company for you to surprise, and surprise negatively or positively. So I really think that until we have our next catalyst with the Cybertruck, we're sort of driven by a real stability. Another point that I thought was interesting is the fact that it's amazing to me how just a year and a half ago, 10 or 15K worth of production up or down could have a significant impact on the stock. But I really think that this reflects the fact that the analysts putting more time in, because at times rewarded with access to retail as well as institutional investors that want to be on top of what's going on with Tesla. So the question is, where do we go from here? I really think the answer to that question is that we're 3 weeks away from the earnings for the quarter being noted. For the last 2 quarters, we've actually had a very similar activity happening, which is the number comes out, the fact that there was discounting going on for the quarter, despite the good revenue numbers, meant that the profit may be declining, when in fact there was a hope for the profit margin and therefore the actual profit to be greater. So as usual, if you want to be in the ballpark of what the number is in terms of earnings, you would take the 435,000 units produced, average the per vehicle average price at 60K, and you could put different revenue or profit percentages in there, let's say at anywhere from, let's say 18 to 20 to 25, and each of those percentages against what the revenue number is would give you a sense for what we should expect for profit for that quarter. So it's always good to be on top of and observing what these numbers look like. I would argue that there's I want to say a strange phenomenon for Tesla that has emerged, which is the metrics that we were using to evaluate the stock in the past have sort of moved on. And in the case of most stocks, including Tesla, it's moved on in this way. Whenever the number comes out for earnings, you typically have a number and it's heavily analyzed to figure out where the company is currently. What's happening with growth stocks, though, is yes, you want those numbers to work off of. The next question, though, is what is the story that goes with those numbers? And most importantly, what's forward growth looking like? And so the answer to this is going to be end up being what's tending to happen now is the growth story seems to be more impactful of the stock than the raw numbers that we're seeing production and profit from those productions that go on. So therefore, I'm kind of expecting the same thing we had last 2 quarters. We come out with a profit number. That number is a little bit light, given that Elon has been discounting vehicles. We then have an initial bad reaction from large institutional money funds or sort of hot money managers. And then we have the large institutions that are looking for stable growth and that are part of the S&P are out there forcibly buying more because they basically have to. But in general, they're not as worried about the short-term profits as the hedge funds are. And so that's kind of what I'm expecting to occur. The next thing that I wanted to sort of run through is the fact that, there are at least 100 copies of the Cybertruck in existence. We're in testing right now, and it's moving around the country in other ways ahead of the deliveries. I keep asking the question, when are we going to see actual deliveries so that we can work off of those? We have a limited amount of deliveries within Tesla right now that they're working from, but that's mostly test vehicles going home with engineers and not necessarily finished products sitting in the hands of customers at the end of the delivery process. So I hope we're not leaking into end of November, beginning of December right now, but in general, that's what we're waiting on for the big catalyst for the stock as we move into the next phase of growth for Tesla. One other thing that I think is sort of lurking out there that I think might be a little bit of a problem for Tesla is the number of people who've ordered their Cybertrucks who don't want to take delivery on a Model Y or an S or something else if we're heading into the new vehicle coming out and they won't have to wait any longer. So I do believe there are a couple of drag elements that might be lurking for Tesla, and that's one of them. So, obviously once the vehicle comes out and is rolling, we won't have to worry about this. But until then, it's sort of hard to, I think that the arrival of the Cybertruck is going to really affect inventory of the other vehicles in terms of probably more inventory, etc. The one last thing I'd like to review today is the fact that I did have a chance to do a couple of channel checks where we visit sort of local service facilities to determine sort of where we are on that vehicle. The answer I came away with was that we're rolling 55% of storage capacity in our larger facility in Tyson Corner. And so how do I feel about that? I think that clearly the production stuff is working fine. The next question mark is how do we, or where do we go from here? And I think where we go from here is a lot of Cybertrucks being sold, but any delay is sort of shaking up ability to get to some nice numbers right away on them. but you definitely don't want to put anything out that's not fully tested, so it doesn't have to come back and create other issues. So I wanted to next move on to our health tips for the day. To finish off that section, just to note, I think that we're within 5 or 10 points of where we're expected to be. I don't see, unless there's something that analysts have shared to their customers that nobody else is seeing, I just think that we're in a stuck mode until we get the real numbers towards the end of the month, and then those real numbers can be analyzed to determine if there are any surprises, negative or positive, with the Cybertruck chaser hopefully being a part of all of that conversation. Who knows how this is going to work, but the shutdown by GM and others is actually also a big deal, because that means there'll be fewer cars available during their strike period to be sold, so that might affect things as well. So, at any rate, just a reminder of, don't forget your 20-minute walk each day, 25 leg lifts per leg, to prevent knee issues and strengthen the quad muscles. Also wanted to encourage you, reminder, ear test, eye test, as ways to make sure there aren't any health issues going on there. And the once a week for fried foods, also a great recommendation. So we definitely look forward to your addition to this list if you're a health professional. And the one other thing I wanted to throw in is that I'm finishing a master's in cybersecurity, and you want to make sure that your password is at least 14 letters, numbers, etc., because it takes a huge amount of time for a CPU to deduce what that number is, and the more slots you have, the better. Clearly, you don't want to do something you can't remember, so that's in order as well. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, au revoir, lahikro, khoda hafiz, raziche, ni hao mo, namaste, Hindi, arrivederci. And in Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.